Okay. Go ahead.
Ready? Got this all up on top. Let's see if I can do it this way. Nope. Do you see a big green square on there?
A big what?
Do you see a big green square on there? Or is that on just mine?
No, there's a green line in the middle.
Okay, that's just on mine. Good, let's bow our heads for prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, be with me as I present things that I have presented for many years as a redo because of the events that are in the world that are going on as we speak. I believe that you are trained to get people's attention. Be with me and be with everybody that was listening here today. In your name, amen. Well, we're going to talk about Daniel 8. And it's the vision that lasts 2,300 days. I started studying this in 1982, which I came out and said with my parents, I told them that Daniel 8 and 12 have a future application, and I've been talking about it ever since. Now you see this here picture here talks about the Western powers coming against Persia and Iran. Actually, it's Media and Persia. Daniel 8:16, make this man understand this vision. This is going to be for when this vision is to appear. Daniel 8:17 and Daniel 8:19. So he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was afraid and fell upon my face. And he said unto me, understand, O son of man, for at the time of the end shall be the vision. So wouldn't it be interesting and knowledgeable for us to know when this vision is to start? And that's what this whole thing is about. And he said, yes.
We don't see your whole screen. It's cut off. Make this man understand this VISI. And that half, the right half of the screen is not there.
Okay, let me come out of this. Because see, there's a, let me move this over here. Now what do you see?
The beginning and ending are missing.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I don't know why it does that. I had that problem once before. There's a green thing that comes around my text, and it doesn't include everything. So let me try to start this. Well, you know what I did? I have to come completely out. Put this back down. Still is doing that. This. This. Okay, you see the whole thing now?
Yes.
Okay. Continuing on, Daniel 8:19, and he said, behold, I will make thee know what shall be in the last end of the indignation, for at the time appointed, the end shall be. And this is why that I have said that that this here will occur around one of God's appointed feast times. And wouldn't you know it, this thing flare up in Israel this time once again happened at a feast time. It is every year when we come around to feast times, they have problems in the Middle East. When the results of this poll came to the attention of the General Conference, President R.R. Figueroa, and he and his officers appointed a committee they named the Committee on Problems in the Book of Daniel. And I know that most of you, unless you have heard me talk about this, have not heard about this here at all, which deliberately, inconclusively for 5 years and issued no formal report. The committee finally voted an informal report that reaffirmed the traditional interpretation, but was silenced as to any problems. Again, the problem was one of biblical hermeneutics. It was impossible to reconcile the traditional interpretation with sound principles of biblical interpretations. And you see, this is where you get these people that that came out and started doing away with the sanctuary and all the problems in there. That was trying to deal with them in this here book. Why didn't they go back and just say what Ellen White told them? Few, even at the General Conference, ever heard about this committee. And at the Glacier Review Conference and the Sanctuary Review Committee in August 1980, Neil Wilson commented that he knew nothing about it prior to that time. And this is from a document from Pacific Union College where some of those people used to teach. And that's why that they came out and heard about it at PUC. So, and I've had this up before in some of my presentations. It does not seem possible for any of us now that any should have to stand alone. But if God has ever spoken to me, by the time will come, that means it's in the future, when we shall be brought before councils and before thousands for his name's sake. And each one will have to give the reason of his faith. Not the Seventh-day Adventist faith, not their pastor's faith, but his faith. Then will come the severest criticism upon every position that has been taken for the truth. We need then to study the Word of God that we may know why we believe the doctrines that we advocate. Not just what we believe, but why we believe them. And this is a review of Herald in 1888. The light that Daniel received from God was given especially for those last days. The visions he saw by the banks of the Uli and Hedekiah, the great rivers of Shinar, now in process of fulfillment. and all the events foretold will soon come to pass. When we as a people understand what this book means to us, there will be seen among us a great revival. We do not fully understand the lessons that it teaches, notwithstanding the injunction given us to search and study it. And have I said that before? We need to watch and pray. That there includes studying these things. Here she puts it, and I was talking about somebody recently, and they said, well, all of the things that occurred in this chapter will come in where the palace was. I says, it doesn't say that at all. But that's what this person believes. So, you know, at least there's someone that's studying. Still waiting for the revival. And this is one of those when then. When we as a people understand what this book of Revelation means to us, there will be seen among the great revival. When the books of Revelation and Daniel are better understood, believers will have an entirely different religious experience. They will be given such glimpses of the open gates of heaven, and heart and mind will be impressed with a character that all must develop in order to realize the blessedness which is to be the reward of the pure in heart. And that's from ministers' testimony of ministers. And this here is from the Sabbath Herald. In the scriptures are presented truths that relate especially to our own time, the period just prior to the appearing of the Son of Man. The prophecies of scripture point, and here their warnings and threatenings preeminently apply. The prophetic periods of Daniel, extending to the very eve of the great consummation, throw a flood of light upon events then to transpire. And I just got notice that there's more rockets going into Israel. Light upon then to transpire. None need remain in ignorance. None need to be unprepared for the coming of the day of God. And when I say the prophetic periods of Daniel, that includes the 2300 days. And this is a question. I remember one of the first persons I asked this was to Abel many years ago. Exactly what occurred on October 22, 1844. Well, here is what was supposed to happen. And he said unto me, unto 22,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. And you notice the ED, that means finished process. Of course, a lot of Seventh-day Adventists has changed to cleanse to cleansing, which can be truth. Cleanse, past simple and past particle of cleanse. Then at the last it says, only God himself can cleanse us. That's from sin and guilt. Clearly used as future past tense in this text. Daniel used it. So let's see what Mrs. White says about it. And in a typical service, there was a work of atonement at the close of the year. So before Christ's work for the redemption of man is completed, there is a work of atonement for the removal of sin from the sanctuary. This is the service which began when the 2300 days ended. At that time, now that means on October 22, 1844, at that time, as foretold by Daniel the prophet, our high priest entered the most holy to perform the last division of his solemn work to cleanse the sanctuary. See, she says that's when the cleansing of the sanctuary started. So what have we done here? The past tense refers to things that have happened in the past. To make the past tense of regular verbs, the ending ed is added to the infinitive. The present particle refers to things that is still happening. To make the present particle, the ending ing is added to the affirmative. there, and this is asked somebody that was asking a question. So when you look at the sanctuary is cleansed, that means that it is ended. So it has a future application. Now, when I started studying this in 1982, I did not go and read what Mrs. White had to say about it. I came about this here only in the last like 10, 15 years. What was cleansed within the sanctuary on October 1844? And this is 2 slides. Mr. Miller and those who were in union with him suppose that the cleansing of the sanctuary spoken of by Daniel 8:14 meant the purifying of the earth by fire prior to its becoming the abode of the saints. This was to take place at the second advent of Christ. Therefore, if we look for that event at the end of the 2300 days or years. But this here quote, there's a but. After our disappointment, the scriptures were carefully searched. You notice what they did when they had a problem? They went to the scriptures. Is that what we're supposed to be today? Yes, it is. With prayer and earnest thought, after a period of suspense, light poured in upon our darkness. Doubt and our uncertainty were swept away. So the next slide tells what that they found. Instead of the prophecy of Daniel 8:14 referring to the purifying of the earth, it was now plain that it pointed to the closing work of our high priest in heaven, the finishing, and I put in here to be cleansed in the future, the finishing of the atonement and the preparing of the people to abide the day of his coming. Now I ask you, do you think the people are ready to abide in the day of his coming? That's something for you to ask yourself. But here she put it future. As in the typical service, there was a work of atonement at the close of the year. So before Christ's work for the redemption of man is completed, there is a work of atonement for the removal of sins from the sanctuary. So do you think it's important for us to observe the Day of Atonement? I do. This is the service which began when the 2300 days ended. At that time, as foretold by Daniel the prophet, our high priest entered the most holy to perform the last division of his solemn work to cleanse the sanctuary. And that is from the great controversy. I didn't put which great controversy. Mrs. White also got only a partial explanation, no information about the daily. With a new and deeper earnestness, Miller continued the examination of the prophecies, whole nights as well as days being devoted to the study of what now appeared of such stupendous importance and all-absorbing interest. In the 8th chapter of Daniel, he could find no clue as the starting point of the 2300 days. The angel Gabriel, though commanded to make Daniel understand the vision, gave him only a partial explanation. And they went to Daniel 9. I'm going to tell you that the starting point of the 2300 days is in Daniel 8, and we will go and talk about that. At the time appointed for the judgment, the close of the 2300 days in 1844, began the work of investigation and blotting out of sins. All who have ever taken upon themselves the name of Christ must pass its searching scrutiny. Both the living and the dead are to be judged out of those things which were written in the books according to their works. And I believe that Abel talked a little bit about this last week, about the investigations in blotting out of sins in the Day of Atonement. The cleansing of the sanctuary involves a work of investigation, a work of judgment. This work must be performed prior to the coming of Christ to redeem his people. For when he comes, his reward is with him to give every man according to his works. Now, when that happens, Do you think that there should be, when they come and you're on trial, do you think that there should be an investigation before the judgment? That's why they called it the investigative judgment. As in the typical service, there was a work of atonement at the close of the year. So before Christ's work for the redemption of men is completed, there is a work of atonement for the removal of the sin from the sanctuary. This is a service which began when the 2300 days ended. At that time, as foretold by Daniel the prophet, our high priest entered the most holy to perform the last division of his solemn work to cleanse the sanctuary. Now, I included a bunch of quotes there to try to tell you that the 2300 days is future. Because there may be some people that have not seen this before. Here, Mrs. White puts Daniel 8 and 12 together. And I have done that since back in the 1980s, I put them together. Because I said that Daniel 12 can't be, you can't take Daniel 12 and out, because they have the same terms that occur. Daniel 12:1, at that time, Michael shall stand up, the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time, thy people shall be delivered. So we're still waiting for this. Everyone that shall be found written in the book. You also think that Michael stood up and at the time of trouble commenced in the spring of 1844? This is from a word to the little flock. The Lord has shown me in vision that Jesus rose up and shut the door and entered the Holy of Holies at the 7th month, 1844. But Michael standing up, Daniel 12:1, to deliver his people is in the future. And that's talking about Daniel 12, when the people want to put it all in the past as all being fulfilled, which I talked about when I did Daniel 12. So there's different texts here that you cannot separate. Daniel 8:13, Daniel 12:11, Daniel 11:31, and Mark 13:14. They all talk about the same thing. Then I heard one saint speaking to another saint and said that certain saint which spoke, how long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot? That is Daniel 8:13, and then the answer comes in Daniel 8:14. Then we go to Daniel 12:11. And from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. So you can't separate those two events because they're dealing with the same thing, the daily and the abomination of desolation. Then you come to Daniel 11:31, and we'll have more on this here later. And arms shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. See, I believe that there's going to be an event sometime in the near future that the little horn, which I will talk about in a little bit, will pollute the sanctuary. How that's been done, I don't know. Now, Mark 13:14, and when ye shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing where it ought not, let him that readeth understand, and let them that be in Judea flee to the mountains. And I believe that when it comes to the time of the end, it's not just the people in Judea, it's everybody. You see, all four of those chapters deal with the same thing. Now, when you go back to the 1800s, you'll see that, and this there is why I told Ted the other day, when Ted was talking about 2,300 days being 1,150 days, you see the 2,300 days here, you see within the 2,300 days, William Miller put the 1260, 1290, 1335 of Daniel 12. He tied them all together. So I'm not the only one that has done that. And at the time of the end shall be the vision. And that was not 1844. Daniel 8:19. See, Moed, a time appointed. And I'm going to show some of these same texts and then where they get it from. And he said, behold, I make thee know what shall be in the last end of the indignation for the time appointed. That's Daniel 8:19. Then you go to Daniel 11:35, and we'll see a quote where Mrs. White says that this is for the time of the end also. And some of them of understanding shall fall and try them, and to purge and to make them white, even to the time of the end, because it is yet for a time appointed. So at the time of the end, at the time appointed, it says that it's going to be at a time appointed that we are all made white. And I wonder if that will be on the Day of Atonement. I'm just wondering. Leviticus 23:4. These are the feast, Moed, of the Lord, even holy convocations, which ye shall proclaim in their seasons, Moed. And you see, that's where they get this time appointed. If seasons, that this here, when these things will occur. Let's start at the beginning of the prophecy or the vision. So we have this question here in Daniel 8:13. Then I heard one saint speaking to another saint, said unto that certain saint, which spake, how long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice, the daily, and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot. Now there's the things that are involved here is the daily, transgression of desolation, sanctuary, and the host to be trodden underfoot. So let's go and see how long will this vision go. Let's go and see where it starts. And see, I think I have another verse. Daniel 8:2, and I saw in a vision, and it came to pass when I saw that I was in Shushan, in the palace, which is in the province of Elam, and I saw in a vision, and was by the river Ulai. Now, I'm not saying that that's where any of these visions are going, or these prophecies are going to be fulfilled. That's where he was when he was in this vision. The world was stirred at the spirit of war. Soon the things of trouble spoken of in the prophecies will take place. The prophecy in the 11th chapter of Daniel has nearly reached its complete fulfillment. Much of the history that has taken place in fulfillment of this prophecy will be repeated. In the 30th verse, a power is spoken of that will be grieved and return and have indignation against the holy covenant. So shall he do. He shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant. And you see, I believe that there is more in Daniel 11:30-35 about the daily and abomination that is in the other text. Because you see here, it says that they forsake the holy covenant. Can that be the National Sunday Law? They forsake the holy covenant. And arm shall stand on his part, and he shall pollute the sanctuary of strength. Now, this, I believe, is a future event when the sanctuary will be polluted and must be cleansed. But that is just my opinion. And shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. This was published in the Review Herald on July 8, 1976 for the first time. It's from letter 103. And I believe it was in another text that has been taken out of the other text. This was in a letter that Mrs. White wrote. So we must find out when this vision starts. Then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto that certain saint which spake, how long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation? And I don't go and talk about what the daily is, because I don't know, or what the transgression of desolation is. I talk about what the starting of the vision and that it's going to have a future application. The vision is mentioned 3 times in the first 2 verses. This is where I had earlier what I was looking for. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, first mentioned, a vision appeared unto me, even unto me, Daniel. After that, which appeared unto me at first. And I saw, this is the 2nd time he's mentioned it, in a vision. And it came to pass when I saw that I was in Shushan, in the palace, which is in the province of Elam. And we're going to talk about Elam later, towards the end. And 3, I saw in a vision, and I was by the river Ulai. So 3 times in the first 2 verses of Daniel 8, he mentions that this was in a vision. And there he is getting a vision. So let's go through this. Then I lifted up my eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram, which had 2 horns, and the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. And I saw a ram push westward, northward, and eastward, or southward. And you notice it wasn't pushing eastward, so that no beast might stand before him, neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand, but he did according to his will and became great. And as I was considering, behold, a he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth, and touched not the ground. And the he-goat had a notable horn between his eyes. And we will go through the definition of, or who these ram and these he-goats are. Well, the he-goat at the time of the end, I believe, is NATO. The ram at the time of the end is an unknown group of people from Arab descent or Persian, that they will do a confederacy between different nations. And there is one out there, but they're not very organized yet. That's why I don't talk about them very much. Then I lifted my eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram, which had 2 horns, and the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. That was in verse 3. Then the definition of this ram is, the ram which thou sawest having 2 horns are the kings of Media and Persia. And there's other people that you'll hear that says, we know Persia is Iran. They say Media is Iraq. Well, I believe that it's Syria, but that's just one of those things that we'll have to wait and find out. And we'll talk more of that. And as I was considering, behold, a he-goat came up from the west on the face of the whole earth and touched not the ground. We're going to talk about that again later. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. And the rough goat is a king of Grecia. And the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. And I know that historically they put that, identified that, but at the future application of that, I believe that it is either United States or Israel. And personally, I believe it's Israel, but time will tell. Media and Persia, which I believe is Iran. And I saw him come close to the ram, and was moved with choler against him, and smote the ram and brake his 2 horns. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground and stamped upon him. And there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hands. Remember, the question is, how long was the vision? This is the first part of the vision, or the start of the vision of 2,300 evenings, mornings, or days. And it started right out at the beginning. I saw a vision, and then he talked about the ram and the he-goat. So let's, you may have seen some things like this here in the news this last week. I put this here as a fulfilled prophecy. You see this guy, you've seen him in the news. Israel is a cancerous tumor that must be eradicated. This was on the Times of June 4, 2018. Let's see what Psalms 83:4 says. They say, "Come, let us wipe them out as a nation. Let the name of Israel be remembered no more." See, and that there is why you see such hatred between these nations. Now, you've seen a guy came out and said recently, or just this last week, that there was something going to happen on Friday. This was done on this TV channel. Let's go back, and this was a few years ago, to see what they had on. It was a conference, and I took some screenshots of what they were saying. Death to England, death to the hypocrites and the infidels, death to Israel. If the leader allows it, that's the Iranian army, can turn Tel Aviv to rubble with its missiles. Because you are the mother of all corruption in this century, we don't want you to exist. And they're talking about Israel and the United States. Yeah, this is August 1, 2022, which is about a year ago. Iran boasts it's one step away from nuclear weapons to turn New York into ruins and hell. Now you see why it's not just Israel. This here was a boast that what they want, one of their plans for New York. And this is why you're going to see a 4-pager later from somebody in New York about this. So the church has attempted to make this a non-issue. Then why did Daniel put it in here? And as I was considering, behold, a he-goat come from the west on the face of the whole earth and touched not the ground. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. And I have had people personally tell me, that doesn't mean that he didn't touch the ground. That just means that they was going fast. Well, I said, well, then why did he put it in there that he touched not the ground? So let's go and see. This is next few will be about statements about by Donald Trump. Money during a press conference between Donald Trump and Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan. Trump spoke rather casually about having reviewed plans to annihilate Afghanistan. I could win that war in a week. I just don't want to kill 10 million people, Trump said. I have plans on Afghanistan that if I wanted to win that war, Afghanistan would be wiped off the face of the earth. It would be gone. It would be over in literally 10 days. And I don't want to go that route. This here was an article by Scott Ritter. And if you don't know Scott Ritter, he's a very interesting person. That's in 2019. Trump, during the same press conference, this is what he was talking about Afghanistan. Trump, during the same press conference where he threatened Afghanistan with nuclear annihilations, said of the situation in Iran, "We are ready for the absolute worst." Trying to define what Trump meant by absolute worst doesn't make much of an imagination. Speaking to reporters on June 26, 2019, Trump stated that any war with Iran wouldn't last very long. I can tell you that it would not last very long. I am not talking boots on the ground or sending $1 million. You know, I'm not talking about boots on the ground. Remember that he touched not the ground? I think that if Trump gets back in, wonder if these things will be fulfilled. I'm just wondering exactly as it is predicted here. The he-goat touched not the ground. Now we're going to look at some of the plans that the United States have had for Iran. This report summarizes and assesses information in the International Atomic Energy Agency quarterly report for February 2023. So that's this year. Verification and monitoring the Islamic Republic of Iran in light of the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2231 including Iran's compliance with the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. You see, the United Nations set up this so that they could go and keep tabs on what is going on with their nuclear plans in Iran. Iran can now break out and produce enough weapon-grade enriched uranium for a nuclear weapon in 12 days, using only 3 advanced cascades and half of its existing stock of 60% enriched uranium. They have, I believe, got it up to 80% now. This breakout could be difficult for inspectors to detect promptly if Iran took steps to delay inspectors' assess. This development amplifies concern that Iran is undertaking covert experiences that add to its ability to more rapidly break out. Worrisome possibilities include that Iran tested a way to produce near weapon-grade uranium without UN detection, which Scott Ritter used to be a member of that, or to siphon off a small amount of near 84% enriched uranium. And you remember what I told you before, that Iran talked about leveling New York and also Israel. This is why these people are taking these things seriously, is because of their threats. This is March 22, 2022, last year. The US Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, and he still holds that position, has sought to reassure Israel and its Gulf allies that Iran will never acquire atomic weapons. And I believe that he was just in Saudi Arabia and Israel, and I bet they was talking about that same very thing. Did they just announce where they're going to attack? And the posturing is part of the strategy. This person told Yahoo News, but he and others cautioned that the messaging has appeared to be growing more bellicose as Tehran has continued to enrich uranium to ever greater levels. And Israel has responded by signaling an increased willingness to strike Iran's nuclear facilities at Fordow, Isfahan, and Natanz. Those facilities are all heavily fortified, so effectively disrupt the work of now taking place there. Israel would have to unleash immensely powerful weapons whose deployment could unleash global, not to mention regional, blowback. And this was by that guy, Alexander, who was a senior White House correspondent, and that was in March of this year. And this is also in March of this year by the same person. If the United States does not establish a credible military threat immediately, either Israel will attack or Iran will have a nuclear weapon, which we will not allow under any circumstances, Israel's defense minister Cohen recently said. So if they get a nuclear weapon, are they going to redraw this red line in the sand, or are they going to do something? Well, time will tell. And this here was in 2021. Republican Center warns that Iran-Israel war is nearing. I've never been more worried than I am right now about a war between Iran and Israel, Graham says on Fox News. The state of Israel is in a bad spot here. How much longer do they wait before they act? I do not think you can trust the United States with Israel's security. This is what he said back in 2021. You want to know what he said this week? Here is what he said on the 9th this week. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina said Iran's oil refineries should be attacked if hostages taken by Hamas are harmed. For every Israeli or American hostage executed by Hamas, we should take down an Iranian oil refinery. Now, so that you know that there was 11 and now I believe 14 Americans that was killed in Israel last week. So Americans have been harmed. There is also an unknown amount of Americans that was taken hostage. I believe our government knows exactly who they are. But when he came out and said this here, that is a warning to Hamas and Iran, you know, that we should take down some of their oil refineries. While Iran came back and says, we will take care of you guys, you know, Americans and Israel, if we harm their oil refineries. So you see, we have this going back and forth this week. What's, you know, of words against words. We'll see what happens. Going back for last year, the details of ongoing war preparations in relationship to Iran have been withheld from the public's eye. And yeah, they have all kinds of situations. The plans have already been made. How to confront the diabolical and absurd proposition put forth by the U.S. administration that using tactical nuclear weapons against Iran will make the world a safer place. And that's by Michael, that guy from last year. And this here happens just about every week, and it has been happening. This is in 2021. And I read reports of these things happening all the time. U.S. airstrikes target Iran-backed militia in Iraq and Syria over drone attacks. Biden authorizes strikes on 3 targets used to launch drone attacks on U.S. soldiers bases in the Middle East, Monitor says. And that there was 5 Iraqis killed, and Syria says that also a child was killed in this here attack. And this here goes, Iran-backed militias vows to attack U.S. aircraft in open war against U.S. as revenge for airstrikes. And this is 2 years ago. So you see, they're going back and forth. Eventually, these things are going to come down to an event. But I tell you, we're not on their time. We're not on Israelis' time. We're not on Iran's time. God will arrange it for when these two happen, then they will happen. In 2004, this is some global research. I get their stuff from them all the time. In 2004, drawing upon the initial war scenarios under Trident, TRIRANT, Vice President Dick Cheney instructed U.S. Strategic Command to draw up a contingency plan of a large-scale military operation directed against Iran to be employed in response to another 9/11 type terrorist attack on the United States. See how long that they've been looking at this? For quite some time, on the presumption that the government in Tehran would be behind the terrorist plot. The plan included the preemptive use of nuclear weapons against a non-nuclear state. And I have said that when the 2 horns are broken, the one in Iran, at least the one in Iran, will be nuclear. The plan includes a large-scale air assault on Iran, employing both conventional and tactical nuclear weapons. Within Iran, there are more than 450 major strategic targets, including numerous suspected nuclear weapon program development sites. Many of the targets are hardened or are deep underground and could not be taken out by conventional weapons, hence the nuclear option. PM, that's Prime Minister, warns Iran, attack Israel and it will be the last anniversary you celebrate. Well, Hamas just recently attacked Israel. That's one of the proxies of Iran. Another proxy, Hezbollah, has been very limited attacks on Iran. We will see what happens in the next few weeks. CBN News, Israel is preparing itself for a limited confrontation against Iran. Iraq is undergoing a civil war, and when the Quad force is operating there on a daily basis, when the country itself is turned into an ungoverned area, advanced weapons are being smuggled by the Quad force into Iraq on a monthly basis, and we cannot allow that, he said. The Iranian-backed Hezbollah, as well as the Iranian Quds forces, are both established in Syria, and Iran is a backer of Islamic Jihad and Hamas on the Gaza Strip. And that's from 2019. It was just looked like this here was under an article called Israel Preparing for Military Confrontation with Iran. These moves are meant to provoke the United States and signal that Tehran has the ability to station its military apparatus a stone's throw from U.S. territory. And this is also this year. Iran's goal has always been to have a military presence in Latin America, so it's not surprising at all for its Navy to announce it's going to make moves on the Panama Canal, noting that in addition to Venezuela and Nicaragua, Iran has open relations with Colombia. Hezbollah, the Iranian-controlled terror group. Wait, I thought it was just in Syria. Also has a presence in Latin America that has been gaining ground for years. Hezbollah militants are known to travel freely in Venezuela and across a relatively lawless tri-border area that includes Brazil, Paraguay, and Argentina. There is mounting evidence that in recent years, Iran and Hezbollah have sought to create a sleeper network in the United States and Western Europe, which could be activated to launch attacks as part of a retaliatory attack. This paper assesses Iran and Hezbollah pre-operation modus operandi, or MO, in the West derived from court documents and open sources reporting the recent arrest of Hezbollah and Iranian agents in the United States and abroad. And this is one of 4, and I'll show you, you'll be surprised where this here investigation comes from. But when I say that the Hezbollah has come across the border, this here article talks about that. It sheds lights on the recruitment, training, placement of these agents and the intricacies of the past operations. While it is impossible to predict when, where, or how Iran and Hezbollah might retaliate as retribution for his killing, this article argues that there is a growing number of indicators and warning signs for a possible attack in the United States or against United States interests overseas. Now going to page 3. They hit him in a cowardly way, but with God's grace and through endeavors of freedom seeking around the world who want vengeance over his blood, we will hit his enemy in a manly fashion. The new leader of the Quds Force, following the death of his predecessor on January 3, 2020, in a U.S. drone strike at Baghdad International Airport. See, they're talking about something happening here in the United States. The Secretary General of Hezbollah called on Hezbollah operatives globally to carry out the appropriate punishment, stating that this will be the responsibility and task of all resistance fighters worldwide. And you see, that's about the same thing that was said it was going to happen yesterday. Now, where did this here come from? Iran and Hezbollah pre-operation modus operandi in the West. Part 1 by Mitchell D. Cyber, former director of intelligence. New York Police Department. Did you know that the New York Police Department had a section that was investigating and working on this thing? That happened after 9/11, because with the high Jewish population there, they know it's coming there again. Now, you may have seen some of these things in the news very recently. This here was 2018. Iran may try to assassinate Trump officials, and it's got more of them. member reportedly offered 1 million for his murder, and this is Mike Pompeo. And the threat comes from Iran. Iran tried to assassinate U.S. official John Bolton, a former Trump advisor. This article was August 11th last year. Now we're going to talk about Elam. So far, we've talked about Iran, but you know, in the Bible, there is a little section that talks about Elam. And see, Elam is where some of those nuclear power plants are. Jeremiah 49. For I will cause Elam to be dismayed before their enemies and before them that seek their life. And I will bring evil upon them, even my fierce anger, saith the Lord. And I will send the sword after them till I have consumed them. And I will send my throne in Elam and will destroy from thence the king and the princes, saith the Lord. But it shall come to pass when? In the latter days, that I will bring again the captivity of Elam, saith the Lord. I will set my throne in Elam. The throne of Nebuchadnezzar shall be set there, or the throne of Cyrus, who began the conquest with Elmias. Or it may be met of the throne of which God sits for judgment. He will make them know that he reigns, that he judges in the earth, that kings and princes are accountable to him, and that high as they are, he is above them. And how will some of these things be done? Well, I believe that some of those things that we will be doing is showing that God is the Lord and creator of all. And you see, some people have forgotten that. This is from Matthew Henry's commentary. Now, you see this here, if you recognize this, this is the Western Wall over here. And you got these guys all worshiping against the Western Wall. And you see the Dome of the Rock back there. Then you see on the another side, you have all these people that are, this is all in Jerusalem, are down and worshiping. There's something's going to come to a head here eventually. Now let's go to Daniel, let's continue on in Daniel 8. And one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceedingly great towards the south and towards the east and towards the pleasant land. That is Jerusalem. And when I tell you that the Vatican will be moving to Jerusalem, some will say, no, that doesn't say, that means that they're going against it. Well, I don't think it's going against it. I think they're going to go there to Jerusalem. That's why I think this may have to do is Jerusalem being broken eventually. But that's only my opinion. And it waxed great even to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the hosts of the stars to the ground and stamped upon them. Yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. So if you want to know, who takes the day away, it is the little horn that takes the day away. It says right there, Daniel 8. And out of one of them came forth a little horn, which acted exceedingly great, and towards the south and towards the east and towards the pleasant land. Now let's go and compare it with Daniel 7. And I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, which before whom there was 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. And this here is another text comparing Daniel 8 and Daniel 7 together. Therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken. And for it came up 4 notable ones towards the 4 winds of heaven. That's in verse 8. And then the definition of that, now that being broken, whereas 4 stood up for it, 4 kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his power. And if it's not in his power, I wonder whose power it was. Could it be Lucifer's? And four great beasts came out from the sea, diverse from one another. And that was from Daniel 7. That's another comparison between Daniel 7 and Daniel 8. And I did a whole presentation on the comparison with those. Now, there is people out there that says the abomination of desolation occurred when the Pope went to Congress in 2015. And we're going to first we'll go down and read Mark and Daniel 12, and then we'll come up to the top and read it. Tell us when these things shall be, and what shall be the sign when all these things shall be fulfilled. But when ye shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of Daniel the prophet, standing where it ought not, let him read there and understand. Let them that be in Jerusalem and Judea flee from the mountains. And basically, Daniel 12:11 says the same thing. But when they say where it is that it ought not to be standing in our Congress, well, our Congress is run and controlled by Catholics. So when them ordering and inviting another Catholic to come and speak there, you can't say it's standing where it ought not. Now, I refer to the reason I believe this was not is because of 2 Thessalonians 2:4. The one who opposeth and exalted himself on high against everyone called God or an object of worship, so that he within the sanctuary of God shall take his seat, be set up, showing himself forth that he is God. That there we know who that is, and that's Lucifer. Within the sanctuary of God. I wonder where he's going to put that sanctuary of God. It's not going to be in the Congress in Washington, D.C. I can tell you that. As a crowning act in the great drama of deception, Satan himself will personate Christ. The church has long professed to look to the Savior's advent as a consummation of her hopes. Now the great deceiver will make it appear that Christ has come. In different parts of the earth, Satan will manifest himself among men as a majestic being of dazzling brightness, resembling the description of the Son of God given by John the Revelator. And I recommend you go into the book of Revelation and read the description that he has there. Who will deceive all that live on the earth? It is not the Vatican who gives him power. And then it is not the Vatican. Then I ask, who gives him power? And you see, I think it was A.T. Jones that said that one time that said that the United States is not a place to be at the time of the end. And he exercises all the power of the first beast. Who? That's the second beast, exercises all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. So who is the second beast? Well, that's the United States. They're going to cause everybody to worship the first beast. And he doth great wonders. Who? This is the second beast. And he doth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles. That's the second beast. That's the United States, which he had power to do in the sight of the beast. That's the first beast. Saying to them that dwell in the earth, that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by the sword and did live. So it's a second beast that causes everybody to make an image of the first beast. And he had power to give life to the image of the beast. And who gave the second beast that power? That the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. It's very important to know who the different images are on the stage at the time of the end. Both beasts gets their power from the dragon. And I saw one of this, and this answers the question before, who gives them the power? And I saw one of its heads that was wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered at the beast. And they worshiped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast? who is able to make war with them. And so people go and say, well, who is behind all this? Who is behind all? Well, it tells you right there. It's not some political family. If it is some political family, that, you know, Rothschilds or whoever, they are controlled and they worship the beast. I believe at the time of the end, there will be two classes of people: the ones that worship the beast, the dragon and the beast, and those who don't. Now, the first beast, they talk about the first, the beast moving to Jerusalem. This here is evidence of their wanting to move to Jerusalem, to get the old city of Jerusalem ready for a special regiment to come. The peacemakers have formed an international workshop called Jerusalem Old City Initiative. When you go through this website reading strategic documents, reports, and plans, you will be stunned at what they have suggested. It's a copycat plan of the foundation of the Vatican statehood in 1929. And the ideas of how to rule this old city statehood in Jerusalem seems to be collected from the governance of the present papal system. And then I got this here text where I show you where I believe that they do. It shows in the Bible where they move. And out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceedingly great toward the south, towards the east, and towards the pleasant land. Now, some may say they're pushing there and they're not moving there. But let's look what Daniel 11:41 says. He shall enter also into the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom and Moab and the chief of the children of Ammon. And then in 45, and he shall plant the tabernacle of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain. That's Jerusalem. Yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. So there is plenty of evidence that shows that there is plans, and if they do eventually will move there. Where will they move there? I have no idea. We have no time to lose. Troublous times are before us. The world is stirred with the spirit of war. Yeah, that certainly is. Soon the scenes of trouble spoken of in the prophecies will take place. The prophecy of the 11th chapter of Daniel has nearly reached its complete fulfillment. Much of the history that has taken place in fulfillment of this prophecy will be repeated. And I went and quoted this here above. So shall he do, he shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant. Yeah, see, they're going to forsake the holy covenant. To me, that is forsake the holy covenant. Forsaking it means like doing away with. I believe that they're going to completely change it. But this says, forsake the holy covenant. And arms shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily, and they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. This here was published in 1976, and I can thank Charles Whitting for this quote. After speaking at the end of the world, Jesus comes back to Jerusalem, the city then sitting in pride and arrogance, and saying, I sit a queen, and shall see no sorrow, and his prophetic eye rested upon Jerusalem. He sees that as she was given up to the destruction, the world will be given up to its doom. The scenes that transpired at the destruction of Jerusalem will be repeated at the great and terrible day of the Lord, but in a more fearful manner. And I believe that's in the Great Controversy also. Whose power? And I was considering, behold, a he-goat came from the west of the face of the horror and touched not the ground. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. That's Daniel 8:5. And the definition of that, and the rough goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn that is between the eyes is the first king. In other words, the most proud one. Now that being broken, whereas four stood up in it. kingdom shall stand out in the nation, but not in his power. But if it's not in his power, then in whose power is he going to stand up? And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgression are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up. And that there will be still, it's the latter part of the kingdom, that's still in the future. At the time of the end shall be the vision. And I know that there is a lot of stuff, but I covered a little bit more about what's going to happen when the Vatican moves to Jerusalem, and it's not going to be good. As far as who is the king of Grecia, is it going to be United States or is it going to be Israel that does the dirty deeds to the Median Persia? I don't know, because both Israel has said the United States is going to take care of Iran, and Iran has said, I mean, the United States has said that Israel is going to take care of Iran. But if I had to guess, I would guess that it would be Israel. And then shortly afterwards, it will be decimated. That is what my feelings about what will happen.
You know, Keith, when we were in Israel in the 90s, they told us that the Vatican's goal was to rule from Jerusalem, and that
Yes.
the Vatican had their property there for 100 years to be able to move in when the time came that they could.
Yeah, well, there is a reporter that had passed away 5 or 6 years ago. His name was Barry Hornish. I don't know, he had red hair and a beard. If anybody had heard of him. I met him once. He was speaking at the conspiracy conference, and that's exactly what his subject was. His subject was about Jerusalem coming to Vatican. And I went up to him afterwards and I said, well, you know, it's prophesied in Daniel 8 that that's going to happen. He hadn't even, he didn't know anything about that.
Yeah, but they said they've had their property there
Yes.
ready to move in for 100 years, and that was back in the 90s.
And when Israel became a state in 1948, I wonder how much the Vatican was behind that.
It's a lot of interesting things. Things are going crazy in the world.
But when, you talk about, this is what I had earlier, and Hezbollah is in there and all those, and Hamas, I had all that in here when I did this before. So none of these things are new. And this battle did not start recently. It started with who? Who was the two brothers? Ishmael and his brother. It started way back, and they have never got along. And they will not get along until Jesus Christ comes.
Chris, are you trying to say something?
I have been studying this stuff. I remember when I went out to my, I was living with my parents, 1982. And I went to my dad and I asked him, when was the 1260, 1290, 1335 days fulfilled? And they looked at me like I was from Venus or something. And my mom said, my dad doesn't say much. My mom said, well, there's a guy that does Bible studies, he'll know. So I went and asked him, oh, they've all been fulfilled, Sonny. And I went back to my parents and says, he doesn't know. And ever since then, I kept on talking about this stuff all the time back then. And then when I go out there, my mom says, your dad's over there studying that stuff you keep on talking about. She said that to me all the time. Little did I know.
Yeah.
And I remember one night working in the emergency room. It was about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. It was all, nobody was there. We didn't have any patients. And we had this whiteboard. And so I was drawing up there the 2300 days, the 1260, 1335 days. I was drawing all that stuff up on the board. And this guy, Poas, he was a housekeeper. He says, hey, keep about that stuff. like, you know. But you
There's
see,
an awful lot there. We wait and see what happens, like you said, because wait and see. It's getting crazy.
I believe that the two horns will be broken on a feast day. So no, I don't think it's going to happen right now. But it could in 5 months. It could in 11 months. I don't know.
We'll wait and see and keep
Wait and
studying,
see.
know where we are when it happens.
Because some of these articles on that I had on here, the people that's on my email list over the years, I have sent some of these out
Yeah, but we just
with
have to keep,
comments.
we just have to keep praying to be ready at all times. And
Yeah. When that thing says, who shall be able to stand? And that's something that nobody can answer but you. You and your life and your activities, will you be able to stand without a mediator?
And to hear those horror stories
Oh man,
that happened last week and stuff, and
it's horrible.
it's,
I know Dan Bongino calls them savages, not civilized people. But you see, I worked in a prison for a while, and a lot of the stuff of crimes in the United States is hidden from the people. The things that actually happen.
I'm sure the other side isn't perfect, but they did give warning. But one didn't, they just hit, and it was on the Pope's feast day, one of his. It was on ours, but it was his too. But now he's gonna go talk to him and be the mediator and have peace. He's told them he would. Okay.
Well, you sent that article this morning about Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has recently made peace with Iran. Saudi Arabia has recently made peace with Israel, which puts Saudi Arabia in a seat that's very precarious. And reading that article, you could tell that they're trying to walk on, you know, not break any eggshells.
Like both sides.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. Anyway, anybody else have any more comments? I see people sitting here.
But you see,
Mr. Camacho,
most Seventh-day Adventists have no idea that there's going to be a future application of Daniel 8. No idea. Even when Mrs. White tells them that.
well, hello, everybody that joined us and everybody listening on Roku and everything. So I guess that's done. If nobody has anything else to say.
Have a good Sabbath.
Seventh-day Adventists have no idea that there's going to be a future application of Daniel 8. No idea. Even when Mrs. White tells them that.
Okay, you want to have a closing prayer?
Sure. Dear Heavenly Father, be with us today as we celebrate a day that you have set apart just for us. Be with those people that's in Israel. Be with the people that's also in the Gaza Strip, especially the ones that don't know you. Provide your Holy Spirit to them so that they can see some of the glories that you have prepared for them. The same thing as in Iraq, Syria, and Iran. Those people, there's a lot of people there that have no idea who you are. Send your spirit to them so that they can see some of your glory. Also be with Hein and his wife as they are dealing with some health issues. And anybody else that's listening, remember the source of all power is you in your name. Amen.
Amen.
And
Well,
by the way, I took my watch off because it kept on going off. The rockets are still flying.
that's sad.